Friends, good morning. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Got some good updates for you this morning on continued pro-life progress. But before we do so, let's take a reflection from my book, Pro-Life Reflections for Every Day. We read in Romans 13:6, the authorities are God's servants, and they devote themselves to this service. Reflection, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, the law cannot get the white man to love me, but it can stop him from lynching me. Laws restrain evildoing. They also have power to shape minds and hearts. When our children learn in school that something is legal, they are learning that such a thing is right. Whether regarding abortion or anything else, both hearts and laws need to be changed. Let us pray. Father, give us a healthy respect for the power of law and a spirit-filled determination to shape law according to your will. Amen. You can get your copy at prolifereflectionsforeveryday.com. Coalition of pro-life leaders sign on to another letter that was released just yesterday to all the members of the House of Representatives, and it talks about abortion-related funding. This is important for you to know, first of all, in terms of where we stand in terms of abortion funding, and secondly, for you to see the unity of pro-life leaders working together. There are like 40 plus leaders of national and state groups that sign on to this letter, myself included, and our other leaders here at Priests for Life like Alveda King and Brian Kemper and Janet Morana. But what's important for you to know is that these things don't always get headlines, but the various pro-life groups are working together, and we at Priests for Life are committed to foster that collaboration and that unity. As you know, the leaders' meetings that we have right here at our building go a long way in doing that. Let me read for you some of this letter, because what it does is it urges the representatives in the House to stop trying to funnel our tax dollars into the abortion industry. Now, right now, a lot of federal laws as well as executive policies of the Trump administration protect your money and mine from being funneled to the killing of babies. But guess who's trying to change that? The Democrats in the House of Representatives. And we said that this would be a problem if Nancy Pelosi became Speaker and the Democrats got into power as a result of the midterm elections, which is what happened. And they're trying to put more abortion funding in there. Now, the good news is they're not going to succeed, because even if the House passes a measure that says, okay, we're putting abortion, more tax dollars into abortion, first of all, the Senate, which is under pro-life Republican majority, isn't going to go for that. They're not going to pass that. So it's not going to get past the divided Congress. It's not going to get to the president's desk. But even if a bill did get to the president's desk, where both the House and the Senate agreed that there would be more funding for abortion, the president has already publicly indicated and indicated to Congress directly that he would veto it. He would veto any bill that increases or protects funding for the abortion industry. But with that in mind, it's nevertheless essential that we express our opposition to abortion funding to those representatives who are currently in the House of Representatives. They need to know where the people stand on this, because if they get pushback, then that will make them think twice again about doing it in the future. If they get no pushback, they're only going to be emboldened to increase these efforts in the future. So a stand has to be taken. And furthermore, if the House of Representatives passes a measure increasing funding for abortion, well, even if it doesn't go any further than that and never has the force of law, nevertheless, that sends a big message across America and around the world, a message that we do not want sent around the world, that somehow the United States citizens favor funding of abortion. People hear this, how the House of Representatives passed a measure increasing funding for abortion, People don't make distinctions about, oh, well, that was just the House, it's not the Senate, the president's going to veto it. A lot of you understand that, but the impression that's given across the country and around the world to those that don't follow these things very closely is, that's what happened. Oh, money is going into the abortion industry. Let me read some of this letter. Again, over 40 pro-life leaders signed on to this. Dear members of the U.S. House of Representatives, as this Congress is presented with proposals for federal health programs and spending, we urge you to oppose any legislation that fails to apply the principles of the Hyde Amendment to federal taxpayer-funded or taxpayer-subsidized programs. We're particularly concerned about the Medicare for All proposal and the efforts to stabilize Obamacare. For decades, the Hyde Amendment and other funding limitation amendments have prevented federal taxpayer funding for abortion or for health insurance plans that include abortion in federal programs such as Medicare, Medicaid, and the Federal Employee Health Benefits Program. Only limited exceptions apply under the Hyde Amendment. Let me pause there and say I knew Congressman Henry Hyde, as did many of my colleagues and some of you as well. What a great pro-life voice he was in the United States House of Representatives from Illinois. Shortly after Roe v. Wade, he was successful in getting enacted what was named after him, the Hyde Amendment, limiting federal money from going to abortion. And that has saved, as the letter goes on to point out, some 2.25 million lives. Put another way, since 1976. Put another way, as the letter says, approximately 1 in every 150 of our fellow Americans is alive today because of this law, the Hyde Amendment. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party platform calls for the removal of the Hyde Amendment. And laws like the one that are being introduced by this Medicare for All bill would also take away the Hyde Amendment and other protections of our taxpayer funding. Let me just read another paragraph of this letter. Recently, the House Rules Committee held an original jurisdiction hearing on H.R. 1384, the Medicare for All Act, a bill that would overturn decades of federal precedent and intent by funding elective abortion. That word elective means abortion by someone's choice, not because there's a medical reason, but just because they want it. The letter goes on to say the list of covered benefits contains, quote, comprehensive reproductive care, end of quote, a euphemism that includes abortion on demand. Let me just read the last couple of lines of the letter. Poll after poll has found that a majority of Americans oppose taxpayer funding of abortion. A 2019 Marist poll found that 54% of Americans oppose using tax dollars to pay for abortions, with only 39% in support. We are strongly opposed to any legislation that covers elective abortion in health care and urge you to oppose such bills unless amended so that such funds cannot be used for plans that include abortion. Friends, the leadership of the pro-life movement is united in speaking loud and clear to the Congress. This letter and letters like it embolden and strengthen our pro-life Republican representatives in the House. Even though the pro-abortion Democrats are in majority in the House, it emboldens our pro-life friends, and it sends a clear message to the rest of them that the people don't stand for this. And thank God we have a Senate and also a president who don't stand for this either. The president will not allow a bill to become law if it contains funding for abortion. So this is the current situation, and encourage your representatives to stand firm on this. If your representative is pro-life, encourage him or her to stand firm on resisting any kind of funding of abortion. And please do the same also with your Democrat representatives. Tell them that they're wrong on this, and we don't want money going for the killing of babies. Speaking of the killing of babies, the state of Alabama has taken a very strong step. The Senate just yesterday approved a bill that would prohibit all abortion in the state, the only exception in there being for threats to the mother's life. But medically speaking, as we have discussed many times on this show, there is no medical reason for abortion in order to save a mother's life. So therefore, effectively, we have a complete protection for the unborn children if this bill were to be signed into law. Now, it's gone to the governor's desk. So the governor is a pro-life Republican. But the question is, will the governor sign it? We'll see. But this is an interesting step forward. It's a very, very strong step. What we're seeing in these months is a very intense battle in the states from some of the most pro-abortion measures that we've ever seen in states like New York, and the most pro-life measures that we've ever seen in the state of Alabama. And so this is really, I want to give a comment on that. And one of you is mentioning tubal pregnancy. I'll say a word about that as well. Because again, even there, abortion is not necessary to save a life. But I'll explain more about that in a moment. But constitutionally, some people will see this as, well, we should do this in order to provoke the court to reverse Roe versus Wade. It's very important for us to think carefully about this. Whether and when the Supreme Court is going to consider reversing Roe versus Wade is completely up to the Supreme Court. In other words, you can't force the court to do anything. If the court doesn't want to take a case because they're not ready to re-examine Roe v. Wade, they're not going to take a case. And on the other hand, if you have justices willing to reverse Roe v. Wade, well then they can take any case at all that has anything to do with abortion and use it to reconsider or reverse Roe v. Wade. The closest that the court came to reversing Roe v. Wade was in the decision 1992, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and that decision did not deal with a prohibition, outright prohibition on abortion. It was dealing with things like state regulations on abortion out of Pennsylvania, including spousal consent and parental consent and other kind of limitations like that. But if it has to do something with abortion, obviously Roe v. Wade is at the foundation of that, and the justices can decide to re-examine that to the extent that they wish. Now, there's a lot of other cases that are going to get to the Supreme Court well in advance of whatever happens with a challenge to this Alabama law, if in fact it becomes law. And those cases are going to give the court an opportunity, if it wants, to re-examine or to modify Roe v. Wade. We think, for example, of the laws being passed in various states to protect babies from dismemberment. And protecting babies from dismemberment, abortion, can give the court a great opportunity to really modify Roe v. Wade to the point of saying, listen, this dismemberment is so barbaric that the so-called right to an abortion should not be permitted in these cases. The court could say that. Bottom line is you don't force the Supreme Court to do anything. And if they're willing to reverse Roe or re-examine Roe, they can do it with any abortion-related case whatsoever. At the same time, the majorities in the Alabama legislature on this bill that was just passed by the Senate are so strong that it leads us again to say, if the duly elected legislators of the people in a particular state want to protect their unborn children, and their governor wants to do so as well, well, then they need to protect their unborn children. And if there's going to be a fight in the courts Well, if they're ready to engage that fight, let them engage that fight. We have to understand one final point. A lot of times, if a case like this makes it into the federal courts, remember you've got 3 levels to the federal courts. Starts in a district court, all right, that's the lowest of the 3 levels. If it gets appealed from there, it goes to a court of appeals, the so-called circuit court. And then a very, very, very small percentage of the cases decided at the circuit court level get appealed to and accepted by the Supreme Court. A district court judge and a court of appeals circuit court judge are bound by precedent, it's called vertical precedent, if the Supreme Court has ruled on an issue that is at issue in the case that they're ruling on. So on an abortion-related case, the district and the circuit court judges feel obliged to apply the precedent of Roe v. Wade. If Roe v. Wade is going to reverse, that's why it's up to the Supreme Court to do so. A lower federal court, like a circuit court or a district court, cannot reverse a Supreme Court decision. Only a Supreme Court can reverse a Supreme Court decision. However, and this is the point I want to make, the value that is found in these cases going up the ladder of the court system, a value that is often not talked about, is that although a district or a circuit court federal judge has to apply vertical precedent, he or she is not obliged to be silent about it. He or she, that judge, can criticize that higher court decision. And in fact, I don't know that there's been any Supreme Court decision more widely and consistently criticized, even up to and including very recent federal court cases on these 2 lower levels, than Roe v. Wade. In other words, a district or a circuit court judge might say, look, in this case, I'm bound by precedent to apply Roe v. Wade, but let me make it clear why I think that's a terrible decision. And then they can actually make an argument in their opinion as to why Roe v. Wade is a bad decision. They can't actually apply anything other than that, but their reasoning then can become an argument that is used by a later court, including the Supreme Court, to in fact reverse or modify Roe versus Wade. So understand how this works. You know, judges are reading and quoting the opinions of judges. Supreme Court justices are looking at the opinions of lower courts. And sometimes the argument in a lower court, or a dissent, you may have a decision in a lower court that upholds upholds or strikes down a pro-life law, but then you have the dissenting judges too that can write their own arguments and opinions. The argument in a dissent often becomes the winning argument later in a majority opinion. And that's part of how this works. And once again, no Supreme Court decision has been more widely and consistently criticized than Roe v. Wade, and with good reason, because it's the most immoral, horrendous, violent decision, not only in U.S. history, but in world history. So congratulations to Alabama. Strong, strong pro-life leadership there among the legislators because, of course, there is strong pro-life conviction among the people. Those of you in Alabama, let us know what you think, and all of you brothers and sisters, let me know what you think as well. Follow the news about this, and we'll see what the governor does with this particular bill. One of you was asking about tubal pregnancy because I made the point that abortion is never necessary to save the life of a mother. When you have a case of a tubal pregnancy, of course, you have a child growing outside the normal location, outside the womb, and the reason that that is a medically complicating factor is that the rupturing of the tube is what causes the medical emergency for the mother and the threat to her. Now, what you do in a case like that is there's a couple of different options. And as Dr. Bernard Nathanson pointed out many years ago, and Dr. Nathanson helped to start the abortion industry, he said, you know, if you were to go in and directly kill that child, that would be immoral. You wouldn't be able to. The end never justifies the means. You can't directly kill somebody to save somebody else. But to protect the mother from the immediate medical emergency, which is the rupturing of the tube, you remove the damaged portion of the tube. It's not the death of the baby that is saving the mother. It's the removal of a damaged organ. And that's a distinction that's made morally as well as medically, that if there were a way to save, and this is what happens, of course, later in pregnancy, if there's a way to save that child, that's exactly what you want to do and that's what you need to do. So you can, for example, deliver a baby early because the process of pregnancy, as our medical advisors on this program have told us, it's the process of pregnancy which later on in medically complicated pregnancies can cause a threat to health or life. It's not the baby per se, and it's not the death of the baby that would provide them a medical benefit. You deliver the baby early and let the baby live, protect and care for the baby, and at the same time help the mom deal with whatever physical distress is resulting from the pregnancy, and lo and behold, you do what doctors are supposed to do, which is to treat both of their patients. But an abortion defined as directly, intentionally killing the child, not only is never justified, it's never medically necessary. And dealing even with tubal pregnancies, you're actually not talking about abortion. You're talking about, again, intervening to remove a damaged, or it's the damage to the organ that is the problem, and the medical intervention assists with that. However, elective abortion is overwhelmingly what we are talking about when we are talking about abortion. If we spoke the same amount of time in proportion to the amount of abortions that are done for various reasons like health or rape or incest, we would hardly speak about it at all. Because not just majorities, but overwhelmingly super majorities of the abortions that occur are being done electively, although I'll make a distinction here. They're being done in the absence of any medical or health reason. And that's why they're called elective abortion. But here's the problem. There are circumstances forcing that mom to get that abortion. So elective, not in the sense that she is freely making the choice. Unfortunately, she's not freely making the choice most of the time. Most of the time, it's someone else convincing her that circumstances require her to do that, or that she has no other choice, or even worse, that someone else in her life is threatening her that they will leave, that they will no longer help her, that they will no longer be in her life, that they will no longer provide her or the baby the support that is needed. And people on the other side call this freedom of choice. In what kind of fantasy world is that freedom of choice? And that's why I always say the problem with that slogan fundamentally is that it's contrary to fact. Freedom of choice? Do women get up this morning and say, oh, today I'm going to exercise my freedom of choice. I'm going to go down to the abortion clinic and end my pregnancy. Freedom of choice. They're not doing it because of freedom of choice. They're doing it because they feel they have no freedom and no choice. And the other side has got to start to learn that lesson and stop trying to justify baby killing using words that sound very nice and that many people rightly support. Freedom, of course we support freedom. Choice, of course we support choice. Women's health, of course we support that. Constitutional rights, yes, we support that. Killing babies, no, we can never support that. Well, God bless you, friends. Thanks for joining me for these reflections. Thanks for all your comments. And we have, oh yes, and Ginger is reminding us, yes, in Rhode Island, and we'll give more updates about this too. Yesterday, one the denial of the abortion bill. That was one of the states considering one of these radical pro-abortion bills. So good for you there in Rhode Island, and we'll report more on that as well. Friends, thank you. Have a great day. And let me give you the Lord's blessing. May he bless you. May he strengthen you. May he answer all your prayers, give you all that you need, and bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Prayerintentions.org. Let me know what your prayer intentions are. And prolifegift.org. Give us a little gift so we can continue our work. We rely only on your support. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. Talk to you soon.
But you know what? When you and I take up this call and we talk about abortion, if we speak about it in church, we're told we're too political. If we speak about it in the political arena, we're told we're too religious. If we speak about it in the world of the media, it's too disturbing. In the world of business, it's too distracting. In the world of education, it's too controversial. In the streets, it's too disruptive. So abortion, if abortion is wrong, where do we go to say so? We go into the churches, we go into politics, into the media, into business, into education, and into the streets. Some churches haven't wanted to get involved in political hassles with the government, so they've been silent on abortion. They didn't want to get involved in hassles from the government. They didn't want to take the fight to the government. So now with the HHS mandate, the government took the fight to them. And when it comes to that mandate, we've got a simple message. We will obey God rather than men. As Alveda can tell us, her uncle said one day to the civil rights movement, we've got a lot of obstacles in our way, but we're not going to let anything turn us around. We're not going to let no dogs turn us around, no water hoses turn us around, no police clubs or jail sentences, and we're not going to let any injunctions turn us around. And so today I say to you, in the pro-life movement, no Planned Parenthood is going to turn us around. No biased media is going to turn us around. No HHS mandate is going to turn us around. No Obama administration is going to turn us around. But you know what? When you and I take up this call and we talk about abortion, if we speak about it in church, we're told we're too political. If we speak about it in the political arena, we're told we're too religious. If we speak about it in the world of the media, it's too disturbing. In the world of business, it's too distracting. In the world of education, it's too controversial. In the streets, it's too disruptive. So abortion, if abortion is wrong, where do we go to say so? We go into the churches, we go into politics, into the media, into business, into education, and into the streets. Some churches haven't wanted to get involved in political hassles with the government, so they've been silent on abortion. They didn't want to get involved in hassles from the government. They didn't want to take the fight to the government. So now with the HHS mandate, the government took the fight to them. And when it comes to that mandate, we've got a simple message. We will obey God rather than men. As Alveda can tell us, her uncle said one day to the civil rights movement, we've got a lot of obstacles in our way, but we're not going to let anything turn us around. We're not going to let no dogs turn us around, no water hoses turn us around, no police clubs or jail sentences, and we're not going to let any injunctions turn us around. And so today I say to you, in the pro-life movement, no Planned Parenthood is going to turn us around. No biased media is going to turn us around. No HHS mandate is going to turn us around. No Obama administration is going to turn us around. But you know what? When you and I take up this call and we talk about abortion, if we speak about it in church, we're told we're too political. If we speak about it in the political arena, we're told we're too religious. If we speak about it in the world of the media, it's too disturbing. In the world of business, it's too distracting. In the world of education, it's too controversial. In the streets, it's too disruptive. So abortion, if abortion is wrong, where do we go to say so? We go into the churches, we go into politics, into the media, into business, into education, and into the streets. Some churches haven't wanted to get involved in political hassles with the government, so they've been silent on abortion. They didn't want to get involved in hassles from the government. They didn't want to take the fight to the government. So now with the HHS mandate, the government took the fight to them. And when it comes to that mandate, we've got a simple message. We will obey God rather than them. As Alveda can tell us, her uncle said one day to the civil rights movement, we've got a lot of obstacles in our way, but we're not going to let anything turn us around. We're not going to let no dogs turn us around, no water hoses turn us around, no police clubs or jail sentences, and we're not going to let any injunctions turn us around. And so today I say to you, in the pro-life movement, no Planned Parenthood is going to turn us around. No biased media is going to turn us around. No HHS mandate is going to turn us around. No Obama administration is going to turn us around. But you know what? When you and I take up this call and we talk about abortion, if we speak about it in church, we're told we're too political. If we speak about it in the political arena, we're told we're too religious. If we speak about it in the world of the media, it's too disturbing. In the world of business, it's too distracting. In the world of education, it's too controversial. In the streets, it's too disruptive. So abortion, if abortion is wrong, where do we go to say so? We go into the churches, we go into politics, into the media, into business, into education, and into the streets. Some churches haven't wanted to get involved in political hassles with the government, so they've been silent on abortion. They didn't want to get involved in hassles from the government. They didn't want to take the fight to the government. So now with the HHS mandate, the government took the fight to them. And when it comes to that mandate, we've got a simple message. We will obey God rather than them. As Alveda can tell us, her uncle said one day to the civil rights movement, we've got a lot of obstacles in our way, but we're not going to let anything turn us around. We're not going to let no dogs turn us around, no water hoses turn us around, no police clubs or jail sentences, and we're not going to let any injunctions turn us around. And so today I say to you, in the pro-life movement, no Planned Parenthood is going to turn us around. No biased media is going to turn us around. No HHS mandate is going to turn us around. No Obama administration is going to turn us around. But you know what? When you and I take up this call and we talk about abortion,